Beneath the vibrant heart of Rome lies a place shrouded in silence and mystery, the Vatican archives. This hidden vault does not showcase history for public admiration. Instead, it quietly safeguards millions of pages, preserving centuries of untold stories. Within these walls rest unsaid papal letters, books that shaped civilizations, dismissed Marian apparitions, secret communications with emperors and intelligence agencies, and artworks never before seen. Why does the Vatican keep these treasures locked away, refusing to speak of them openly? This is not a tale spun from conspiracy, but a profound journey into the world's most deeply buried chronicles of faith. Welcome to the secrets of the Vatican archives, where instead of echoing familiar narratives, we gently unravel what was meant to remain concealed. Beneath the very heart of Rome lies a place shrouded in silence and tightly sealed behind layers of iron and stone, the Vatican archives. It is a vault not meant for the public eye, where history is not showcased but quietly guarded. Access to this profound repository is granted to only a select few, not to cardinals or renowned scholars, but to humble custodians like myself. My role was simple on paper: to clean, to take notes, and to deliver approved materials to researchers. Yet, in the stillness of the night, when the old priest nodded off and the oil lamp flickered faintly, I found myself drawn to doors others dared not open. Behind those doors awaited secrets that forever changed my understanding of faith and history. These archives are not just storerooms of parchment and ink. They are repositories of truths too profound, too challenging to be exposed to the world without caution. As a mere caretaker stepping into shadows others feared, I glimpsed the delicate balance between revelation and concealment, an invitation to witness not conspiracies, but the deepest memories of belief, waiting patiently beneath the walls that echo no sound. I once found myself among the privileged few granted entry into the Vatican archives, a realm unseen by most. Yet, I was no cardinal, no renowned historian, nor born of noble lineage. I was simply a caretaker, or custode, entrusted merely to clean and deliver documents to scholars. But on certain quiet nights, when the old priest dozed and the flickering oil lamp cast gentle shadows, I would dare to open doors shrouded in silence and secrecy. From that moment onward, my path altered irrevocably. As years passed, I felt time slipping away. My heart slowed, my eyes dimmed in the candlelight, and my hands trembled when touching ancient parchments that once felt as familiar as my own skin. Before all of these memories fade with me, I am compelled to speak, not to shock or accuse, but so that someone, somewhere, may come to understand. Within those hidden chambers, I encountered unset letters from Pope Pius XII resting quietly in unmarked drawers. I read forbidden texts once deemed threats to faith and stood before paintings by Caravaggio, withheld from the public eye because their intense gaze confronted pains theology dared not face. Above all, I realized that what remains concealed is not falsehood, but truths too profound and unsettling to embrace. I do not ask for belief nor offer proof recognizable to the world. Yet, if you continue to listen, if somewhere inside you senses that beneath every halo glory lies something deeper, unresolved, perhaps you are the one I must reach. For one day, those sealed doors will no longer hold, and when they open, you will understand why I could never return. Beneath the surface of the Vatican archives lies a profound truth often misunderstood. The term secretum does not signify secrecy in the modern sense, but instead means privacy. Officially named the Archivum Secretum Apostolicum Vaticanum, this treasure trove is the personal archive of the Pope himself, distinct from the Catholic Church as an institution. This designation underscores the intimate nature of the collection, maintained solely for the Pontiff's stewardship rather than for public or even clerical access. spanning an immense 85 kilometers of shelving and housing over 35,000 catalogued entries from the 8th century onward. The archives hold an extraordinary range of documents. Yet, despite their vastness, access is highly restricted. Only a delicate portion of the material is available even to scholars, while the most sensitive pieces remain sealed in the innermost vaults. This deliberate privacy has fueled countless theories and speculations, but at its core, the archives serve as a private sanctuary for memories, correspondence, and decisions that reflect centuries of the Pope's personal responsibility rather than the Church's corporate face. In embracing this privacy, the Vatican archives protect a sacred space where the unfolding complexities of faith, politics, and human history quietly reside, waiting for the right moment and the right eyes to understand them. Among the countless treasures housed within the Vatican archives are documents that shed light on pivotal moments in history. One of the most significant holdings is the correspondence related to Galileo Galilei's trial. In 1613, Galileo wrote a letter to the Church explaining that his astronomical observations did not conflict with Scripture. Yet, by 1616, the Church deemed heliocentrism heretical, and Galileo faced the Inquisition in 1633, a tribunal whose records are meticulously kept within these vaults. These documents reveal not just the trial's outcome, but also the nuanced theological debates and the dissenting voices within the clergy who resisted condemning Galileo. Another long-hidden trove relates to the Knights Templar in the 14th century. For centuries, it was thought the Vatican destroyed all traces of their trial. However, in 2001, a remarkable discovery surfaced, a document showing Pope Clement V secretly absolved the Templars. This contradicted the belief that the Church was complicit in their downfall and raised profound questions about the motivations behind hiding this truth for over 700 years. The archives also preserve sensitive correspondence from the 20th century, notably letters exchanged between the Vatican and Nazi Germany. Hundreds of reports from German bishops to the Holy See reveal that the Vatican had early knowledge of the mass persecution of Jews. The Church's response was complex, balancing faith, political calculations, and fear of reprisals. In 2020, after decades of debate, the Vatican declassified part of the archive related to Pope Pius XII, whose papacy spanned World War II years. These documents unveiled a more complicated picture of the Pope's actions. While publicly silent, he quietly endeavored behind the scenes to save lives, a strategy whose morality and effectiveness continue to fuel scholarly discourse. Beyond these, the archives contain intimate letters from historical figures like Michelangelo, sketches by Bernini, a poignant farewell letter from Mary, Queen of Scots, and even correspondence from a Native American chief to a pope in the 19th century. Together, these documents weave a rich tapestry that connects the Vatican with diverse historical narratives, from the bloodshed of crusades to scientific revolutions and political upheavals, preserving the multifaceted stories that have shaped our world. Within the Vatican archives lies a trove of documents shedding light on the institution's complex and often troubling relationships with authoritarian regimes throughout history. These records reveal a nuanced and sometimes unsettling portrait of the Vatican's interactions during times of political upheaval and moral crisis. Notably, the archives contain hundreds of correspondences between the Vatican and Nazi Germany, including letters exchanged with Hitler's regime and reports from German bishops. These materials suggest that the Vatican possessed early awareness of the mass killings of Jews. However, the Vatican's response was far from straightforward. Shaped by faith, political calculation, and a profound fear of persecution, the Holy See chose a path of cautious diplomacy rather than open condemnation. In 2020, After decades of controversy and debate, the Vatican declassified a portion of documents related to Pope Pius XI's papacy during World War II. These papers unveiled a more complicated picture of the Pope, often accused of silence. Rather than outright inaction, he chose to secrete efforts behind the scenes to save lives. This strategy, a blend of quiet intervention and cautious silence, continues to fuel scholarly debate about its ethical implications and effectiveness. Further documents disclose the Vatican's diplomatic relations with other authoritarian powers, such as Franco's Spain, where the Church maintained ties with the dictatorship for decades. Amid internal disagreements among clergymen, orders from above often prioritize protecting the faithful under oppressive regimes, resulting in a compromise between moral ideals and political pragmatism. The archives do not paint a picture of a monolithic or unyielding institution, but rather an entity wrestling with the tension between spiritual duties and harsh political realities. These documents bear witness to the Vatican's delicate balancing act, navigating survival, conscience, and influence in times when open confrontation could have endangered countless lives. Through these preserved correspondences and reports, the Vatican archives expose a facet of history that is neither simple nor comfortable, revealing an institution deeply entangled in the moral complexities of power and survival amid authoritarianism. The Vatican archives lay bare an ongoing tension that has spanned centuries, the intricate struggle between faith and politics. Within these vaults, documents reveal how the Holy See has consistently grappled with reconciling its spiritual mission with the practical realities of the temporal world. Far from a simplistic narrative of unwavering faith, the archives show a church navigating a complex landscape where moral imperatives often clashed with political expedience. Records from various periods illustrate moments when Vatican leaders faced agonizing decisions, balancing the call to uphold religious principles against the demands of diplomatic relations and survival. During World War II, for example, archival files disclose the Vatican's fraught calculus in responding to the horrors unfolding around them. A silence that many argue was strategic, aimed at preserving the Church's influence and missions amidst oppressive regimes. Similarly, in the turbulent era of the Cold War, the Vatican quietly engaged with both Western intelligence agencies and communist states, navigating ideological battlegrounds with subtle diplomacy rather than overt confrontation. Internal memos unveiled debates among popes, cardinals, and advisors about the limits of speaking out or acting publicly, reflecting an institution deeply aware of its political vulnerability yet determined not to abandon its moral responsibilities. This duality has shaped its approach to delicate issues like anti-Semitism, colonialism, and human rights, revealing a church caught between preservation of faith and the exigencies of worldly power. Through these archives, one comes to understand that the Vatican is not insulated from the forces shaping global history. Instead, it stands as a testament to the enduring tension between the transcendent ideals of faith and the imperfect demands of political reality, a space where sacred doctrine continually meets the messy, often painful realities of human governance and survival. The Vatican archives hold a trove of documents revealing the intricate and often troubling relationship between faith and colonialism, stretching from the 15th to the 19th centuries. Here, faith and empire were intertwined in ways that shaped global history and left enduring marks. One of the most striking pieces in the archives is the papal bull Intercetera, issued by Pope Alexander VI in 1493, merely a year after Columbus's arrival in the New World. This decree divided newly discovered lands between Spain and Portugal, effectively granting the Church authority to apportion global territories. Holding this document, impressed with the crimson seal of the Holy See, one senses the moment when religion became deeply politicized, used as a tool to legitimize territorial claims and conquest. Attached to these decrees are letters exchanged between the Vatican and European monarchs, requesting protections for missionaries and the promotion of the Christian faith in new colonies. Yet these letters mask a harsher reality on the ground: violence, cultural erasure, and suffering. Among these voices preserved in the archives is Father Bartolomé de las Casas, who in 1537 pleaded with Pope Paul III, describing the massacres of indigenous peoples in the Caribbean. His letters spoke not only of injustice, but of a church conscience grappling with moral failure amid colonial exploitation, a somber cry hidden within official correspondence. Interestingly, the archives also contain the draft of the 1537 Apostolic Brief Sublimis Deus by Pope Paul III, affirming the humanity and souls of indigenous peoples and condemning their enslavement. This progressive stance, however, was quickly undermined under pressure from European powers intent on economic interests, a testament to the complex interplay between spiritual ideals and worldly power. As the centuries move forward, documentation from the 19th century shows the Vatican's diplomatic efforts in colonial regions such as Vietnam and Africa. Reports detail the struggles of missionaries and converts navigating local politics and religious persecution, while simultaneously illustrating how faith was used to mediate relations between empires and indigenous societies. These texts reveal not only pastoral concerns, but also the Vatican's role in legitimizing and smoothing the course of colonial expansion. Not all within the Church acquiesced quietly. The archives preserve numerous records of internal dissent, priests and bishops who protested atrocities perpetrated in the name of empire and faith. One poignant case from 1885 recounts a French bishop's formal complaint after witnessing brutal abuses under King Leopold II's rule in the Congo. The Vatican's muted response, "We pray for them, but intervention is beyond reach," marks the painful limits of its influence and the weight of political realities. These layered documents document a church caught between its spiritual mission and the moral complexities of worldly dominion. The archives do not offer simple judgments, but preserve the nuanced tensions between righteousness and power, faith and politics, accountability and silence. Within these pages, the Vatican's role in colonial history emerges not as a matter of black or white, but a profound, complicated gray, one etched into the very fabric of global history. Within the vast expanse of the Vatican archives lies a lesser-known realm revealing the intricate internal dissent that has shaped the Church's history. Contrary to the image of a monolithic institution, the Vatican has long been a living, breathing entity teeming with disputes, contradictions, and silent struggles among those draped in white robes. One particular section of the archives, marked Sub Secreto Pontificio, preserves sequestered records of private confrontations, disagreements between popes and cardinals, and even tensions between former pontiffs and their successors. These confidential exchanges remain locked away, while the subjects are alive, emerging only when history permits. A striking example involves the conflict between Pope Paul VI and Cardinal Giuseppe Siri, once considered a frontrunner for the papacy. During the Second Vatican Council, Siri vehemently opposed sweeping reforms, from replacing Latin with vernacular languages en masse to opening avenues for dialogue with other faiths. Internal correspondence reveals his private denunciations of what he saw as the dismantling of sacred traditions. Yet the Pope's terse reply underscored the resolve to move forward. The shepherd cannot wait for the hesitation of the gatekeeper. Beyond theological disputes, fractures also surfaced in the Vatican's financial governance. One of the most notorious episodes documented with painstaking detail pertains to the Vatican bank crisis linked to the Istituto per l'Opera di Religione, IOR, in the late 1970s and early 1980s. A voluminous 600-page dossier titled Caro Calvi chronicles the enigmatic death of Roberto Calvi, dubbed Dodd's Banker, found hanged beneath London's Blackfriars Bridge in 1982. Within these pages lie bank statements, exchange notes between IOR and Banco Ambrosiano, records of suspicious loans, and lists of front organizations in Panama. A bishop's handwritten note strikingly warns, "We are using sacred assets for activities dangerously close to sin." Despite such great concerns, the warnings were disregarded as efforts unfolded to reorganize internal records and obstruct legal investigations. These episodes expose an institution wrestling not only with faith, but with power, money, and human frailty. The Vatican archives do not seek to conceal or absolve, but preserve these internal rifts as sober testaments to the complex reality behind the Church's venerable facade, proof that beneath the sacred vestments beat the hearts of fallible men caught in the web of history. Among the countless treasures stored within the Vatican archives lies a lesser-known trove devoted to art that has never graced public view. Beyond the celebrated frescoes on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and the iconic stained glass windows, there exists a secret vault hidden behind layers of security, where works of profound beauty and deep complexity remain concealed from the world. I recall one misty morning when I was escorted down to a secluded basement tucked away behind the Vatican museums. Passed through 3 iron doors was a small chamber known as the Deposito Pittorico Reservato, the reserved painting repository. Here reside paintings, sketches, and studies withheld either because they awaited evaluation or were deemed incompatible with the prevailing theological narratives of their times. The first rack I approached contained an unpublished charcoal sketch by Michelangelo, crafted on darkened paper. It depicted a figure reaching out, soaked in pain and longing. Unlike the creation of Adam in the Sistine Chapel where divine light touches man, this figure was surrounded by darkness. Beneath the drawing, a handwritten note read, "Non destinato alla cappella. Troppo umano. Not destined for the chapel. Too human." It made me wonder what compelled the Vatican to conceal such a masterpiece. Perhaps it revealed a side of humanity theology found too raw, a pain too real to adorn sacred walls. On another shelf lay 2 oil paintings attributed to Raphael Sanzio, though their signatures had been obscured with gray ink. One showed a pregnant woman clasping a crucifix, an image striking in its portrayal, yet considered theologically inconsistent, since the Virgin Mary is never depicted that way. The notation beside the artwork warned, "Causat confusionis doctrinalis," potential to cause doctrinal confusion. Thus, a work of art was veiled not for lack of beauty, but because it stirred questions the Church was reluctant to face. Another unpublished painting attributed to Caravaggio portrayed St. Peter not as an exalted apostle, but as a weary fisherman, his face smudged with dirt, clutching a tattered fishing net. No divine light illuminated him, no halo crowned his head, only the burden of a humble man at the dawn of faith. Was this why it was withheld? Perhaps because it lacked the sanctified image the faithful expected, exposing instead the human vulnerability beneath sainthood. I encountered an entire dossier entitled Iconographia Contestata, Contested Iconography, listing artworks removed, covered, or prevented from reproduction. Among them were statues of the Virgin Mary rendered with African and Asian features, created by indigenous artisans during missionary efforts. A 1911 Vatican Cultural Council memo stated, "Diversity is part of divine creation, but uniformity is necessary to preserve sanctity." Consequently, many such statues never found their place on altars, their inclusion seen as disruptive to ecclesiastical uniformity. The archive also preserves modern art rejections, folders chronicling refusals of exhibitions by daring artists like Salvador Dali, Francis Bacon, and Yayoi Kusama. One 1950 document recorded Dali's proposal, a surreal revelation of the saints. Vatican officials responded firmly, "We cannot allow sacred imagery to become obscure visual metaphor." Though these works were never destroyed, on the contrary, the Vatican preserved them meticulously, documenting their every layer, every brushstroke, every crack, yet deliberately keeping them hidden from public view. This choice is not rooted in the rejection of artistic merit, but in a complex tension, the sharp boundary between theological clarity and artistic expression. Theologically, certainty and purity are paramount. The rawness, ambiguity, and unfinished nature shared by some artworks might unsettle the faithful's devotion. The Vatican fears that revealing a faith still wrestling with humanity's shadows, its imperfections and doubts, might undermine the spiritual stability cherished for centuries. As I left that quiet vault, the images that lingered in my mind were not those of angelic figures or flawless holiness. Instead, it was the eyes from hidden paintings, eyes covered in dust, staring out from forgotten canvases, that haunted me. Perhaps, I reflected, what the Vatican withholds is not the fear of losing belief, but the fear of unveiling a faith still evolving, a faith where saints and sinners coexist, where heaven and earth remain a fragile, unfinished dialogue, ever-changing on the canvas of human experience. When one thinks of the Vatican, the image that often comes to mind is that of ancient rites, sacred prayers, and unwavering tradition. Yet, nestled within its archives lies a lesser-known chronicle, the complex, often tense relationship between science and faith. The Vatican Observatory, one of the oldest astronomical research institutions in the world, stands as a testament to this ongoing dialogue. Among the stacks, I found records spanning from the 17th century to the modern era, handwritten notes on celestial events, comet sightings, and solar eclipses. One noteworthy notebook, dated 1610, and copy from Jesuit astronomer Christopher Cladius, who helped design the Gregorian calendar, stated, "The stars are not disorder. They are signs of an order we do not yet understand." This observation revealed to me that the Vatican never turned its back on scientific inquiry. Rather, it sought to engage on its own terms. A deeper dive uncovered documents linked to the Galileo affair, an episode often misunderstood as an outright rejection of science. Among these was a 36-page report by clerics trained in mathematics and astronomy, defending the concept of a stationary Earth in harmony with Scripture, while quietly questioning why Scripture remains silent on certain scientific phenomena. The Vatican's internal dialogues recognized that doubt need not equate to heresy. Further files included a never-published letter from Pope Benedict XIV, dated 1741, calling for the rehabilitation of Galileo's name. Though not publicly announced, the letter's preservation signaled an acknowledgement of past mistakes, an act of redemption conducted in silence. The 20th century record showed increased collaboration with the international scientific community. A 1935 letter from an African expedition leader expressed that faith did not hinder the pursuit of knowledge but emboldened it. Minutes from a 1981 Vatican symposium chronicle the discussion between theologians and quantum physicists on the multiverse hypothesis, highlighting a willingness to embrace expanding scientific horizons. Correspondence with NASA around the Apollo missions revealed respect and fascination. A 1962 letter to President Kennedy prayed for those who dared to explore beyond earthly confines. Moreover, A 1990 letter from Stephen Hawking to the Pontifical Academy of Sciences questioned the necessity of God in cosmological origins. Rather than dispute, a theologian's confidential note reflected, "If God must hide in the gaps of equations, then he is not truly eternal," underscoring a nuanced theological contemplation rather than outright rejection. Today, the Vatican Observatory continues its quiet work, choosing dialogue over confrontation. The archives bear witness not to conflict, but to a faith that never extinguishes reason, a faith that, instead, ventures to the edges of understanding, awaiting the moment when the final light fades yet something immeasurable remains. Within the Vatican archives lies a modest collection bearing the enigmatic title Myers in Silentio Ecclesiae, Women in the Silence of the Church. Curiously, this trove holds neither an extensive cache of documents nor loud proclamations, but rather a subtle and persistent current of history that has never been officially acknowledged by the Vatican. Its silence is not born of rebellion, but of the unresolved question that continues to whisper through the ages. What is the true place of women within a faith tradition ruled for nearly 2 millennia by men? I began my exploration with a series of 12th-century handwritten letters penned by Hildegard von Bingen, a German nun, composer, theologian, and visionary. Her writings, mostly in Latin and Old German, reveal profound theological and philosophical insights born from spiritual visions. One letter, addressed to Pope Eugenius III, boldly proclaimed, "The soul of a woman is also breathed into being by God. So why must her voice pass only through the mouths of men?" This letter was met not with condemnation but silence, a deliberate quiet. Hildegard was not branded a heretic. In fact, she was praised by several voices within the Roman Curia, yet she was kept at a distance. An internal record dryly noted, "This woman is not wrong, but the Church cannot yet permit women to teach from the pulpit." Thus, while her intellect was acknowledged, an invisible boundary barred her from roles of open authority. Deeper in the archives, I uncovered a file titled Manualium Scripture, Writings of the Nuns. This was a collection of prayers, poems, and liturgical works composed by women in religious orders spanning from the 9th to the 16th centuries. These texts, rich with grace and quiet defiance, whispered of an existence lived in the shadows. "I do not ask to be priest. I ask to tend the flame unseen, burning quietly in the darkest chapel corner." These words were never spoken in formal sermons or official writings. Yet, passed hand to hand, their faded ink continues to echo a resilient devotion through the centuries. One of the most haunting archives tells of heresy investigations targeting women whose spiritual influence grew too large, a fearful response to voices refusing to be silenced. A case from 1321 recorded the trial of a group of women in southern France, accused not of blasphemy but of unauthorized preaching, merely gathering to share Bible readings and personal interpretations. In one interrogation, Clara was asked, "Do you believe women can interpret the Word of God?" She boldly answered, "If God chose a virgin to bear him, why would he not choose her tongue to proclaim him?" Though the text ends with a tragic note that she was burned at the stake, it closes with a solemn truth. Many voices endured beyond that fatal judgment. Moving into the modern era, the archives reveal early signs of change. Documents from the Second Vatican Council capture serious discussions about expanding women's roles within the Church. One handwritten note from Cardinal Suanen states, "It is not enough to bring more women into the Church. We must admit they have always been here." From 1965 onward, commissions began including women as theological advisors, but with a caveat captured in the Latin phrase consultano non diter. They may advise, but they do not decide. Even more recently, minutes from a 2016 meeting explored the possibility of female deacons. Female theologians presented compelling historical evidence of deaconesses recognized in the 1st through 3rd centuries in early Christian Greek texts. Yet, resistance remained. One cardinal argued that this was not equivalent to ordination today. Another, whose name was redacted, countered pointedly, "If a truth must be hidden because our current structure cannot contain it, then the fault is not in the truth." That line compelled me into contemplative silence. Throughout all these layers of faded parchment and cautious ink, the Vatican archives neither erase nor elevate these women's histories. Instead, they rest quietly in the margins, never loud enough to echo from the pulpits, but enduring enough to withstand the relentless passage of time. And as I closed that unassuming wooden box, I understood. The church was built not merely of stone and men, but with the hands of women who laundered vestments, copied sacred texts, nurtured the faithful, and carried silently the flame of faith through its darkest, most hidden centuries. When one thinks of miracles, vivid images often come to mind: radiant lights, weeping statues, or celestial hymns echoing from the heavens. Yet, what I encountered in the Vatican Archives section titled Supernaturalist Recentio, the review of supernatural phenomena, was far from such spectacle. Instead, I found thousands of meticulously organized documents, reports, black and white photographs, audio recordings, medical transcripts, and detailed clinical evaluations. The atmosphere was akin to that of a crime scene investigation, methodical and sober. One particularly notable file detailed the famous apparitions of the Virgin Mary in Fatima, Portugal, in 1917, an event still widely regarded as a miracle. But what the Vatican preserved with utmost care was not simply the accounts of the visions themselves. Rather, it was the process of verification. An October 26, 1930 memorandum from the Archbishop of Leiria to the Holy See reported having interviewed over 60 witnesses and even photographed his son during the predicted moments, detecting no optical distortions in the cameras. Remarkably, the local eyewitness descriptions concerning the movement of light were consistent. The Vatican neither outright denied these happenings nor proclaimed a miracle. Instead, it classified the event as acceptable for devotion, yet not binding for belief, a stance reflected repeatedly in similar records examining various apparitions. This approach implied neither rejection nor blind acceptance, but cautious theological and pastoral discernment. Another file chronicled the 1858 Lourdes apparitions in France, where young Bernadette Soubirous reported seeing the Virgin Mary multiple times in a grotto. The Vatican's records preserved exhaustive interrogation transcripts, medical and psychological evaluations, all indicating the girl showed no signs of hallucination. Yet the described figure did not align perfectly with doctrinal conceptions of the Virgin Mary at the time. Ultimately, while the Church refrained from officially validating the visions, it acknowledged the inexplicable healings occurring after pilgrimages, subjecting them to prolonged study and restraint. Similarly, the 1973 apparitions at Akita, Japan, remained unapproved by the Holy See for over 20 years. Multidisciplinary panels, including doctors, psychologists, and theologians, were dispatched to investigate in rigorous detail. One internal note described how the weeping statue of the Virgin was chemically verifiable, but scientifically inexplicable. The Vatican's stance was not to rush to declare a miracle, but to monitor the phenomenon carefully, a hallmark of its measured approach. Amid these files, I also found a registry titled Cozy Ray Rejected Cases, documenting hundreds of reports deemed fabrications, exaggerations, or lacking any supernatural merit. This archive held photographs evidencing simple plumbing leaks mistaken for tears, audio recordings traced to human interference, and confessions from visionaries motivated by financial gain or notoriety. For example, One Latin American visionary admitted being paid by a pilgrimage group. The Vatican's record succinctly closed such cases with secular motivation, file closed. The archives further revealed Vatican scrutiny of unexplained healings. The Consulta Medica, an independent medical panel, evaluated every claim thoroughly. One 2002 file described a Parkinson's patient who experienced full recovery after praying to Blessed John Paul II. Although the attending physician confirmed the recovery, the Vatican insisted on 5 more years of observation to exclude natural remission. No sentimentality, no haste, only a rigorous, clinical process. Among the more unusual cases was that of Aurora Messina, a 17-year-old Italian girl who claimed to receive nightly divine prophecies during full moons in 1966. Crowds gathered, but after 7 months, Vatican notes concluded no objective evidence for supernatural origin existed. The voice in her room was traced to a hidden speaker installed by her brother to protect the villagers' faith. This case was stamped deception for notoriety and closed. Yet, perhaps the most poignant file lacked a date and bore the title Lux Inter Cos, Light Among the Blind. It contained the testimony of an elderly priest from a Swiss mountain monastery who recounted seeing a glowing child in the snow one night. When approached, the child vanished. The priest did not seek recognition. He simply wished the Holy See to record his account so others would not doubt their own experiences. The Vatican neither affirmed nor dismissed the testimony. An examiner's note stated simply, "Silence is the only way to preserve the sacred." The Vatican does not chase wonders. It observes, doubts, measures every tear from statues, every unexplained light, every whispered prayer. In that patient silence, it chooses to safeguard what remains unexplainable, not to showcase, but to remind itself that if God truly reveals himself, he will do so without trumpet blasts or public fanfare. He will arrive in moments no one expects, heard only by those patient enough to wait, just as the Vatican has done for centuries. Within the depths of the Vatican archives lies a collection rarely spoken of, the prophecy of Saint Malachy. For many within the Vatican, this name stirs unease more than reverence. It was during my research on early 17th century councils that I stumbled upon a thin, unassuming file tucked inside an unrelated dossier. The cover bore the simple marking, De Prophetia Malachi, an unpublished version dating back to 1595, the same year the prophecy first appeared in print in Rome by Father Arnold I in his work Lignum Vitae. The Vatican's decision to preserve this manuscript was less about belief and more about careful monitoring of its spread. A margin note by Cardinal Baronius cautioned, "The people are enamored with this prophecy as if it were a fifth gospel. But faith built upon fear is not faith." The prophecy, attributed to the Irish Archbishop Malachiel Morgare during a pilgrimage to Rome in 1139, lists 112 Latin mottos, each believed to correspond to a future pope, extending from Celestine to a final pope destined to witness the fall of the Holy City and the Day of Judgment. Inside the archives, I found an internal table linking each prophetic phrase to an actual pontiff. Some matched with eerie precision. Asterisk lumen in Calo asterisk, light in the sky, referred to Pope Leo II, whose coat of arms bore a radiant star. Pastor Angelicus, the angelic shepherd, aligned with Pius XII, venerated for his spiritual life. Yet, as the list progressed, the connections grew increasingly tenuous. A Vatican memo from 1978 concluded, "This is the effect of reading backward. People assign meaning to what has already passed, not what is to come." What prevented the Vatican from outright denouncing the prophecy was its chilling final line, asterisk persecutions extent at asterisk, Asteris Petrus Romanus star. The last pope, Peter the Roman, would reign during the final persecution of the Holy Roman Church, before the city of Seven Hills is destroyed and the dreadful judge renders judgment upon the people. After 2013, when Pope Benedict XVI resigned, the first papal abdication in 6 centuries, and Jorge Mario Bergoglio assumed the name Francis, May faithful wrote hundreds of letters to the Vatican, questioning if this was indeed the final pontiff. An internal 2014 meeting among cardinals recorded a young bishop expressing concern about the prophecy being wielded as a tool for apocalyptic fear and to undermine the Vatican's reform efforts. The dean of the College of Cardinals replied calmly, "The Church does not fear the end. We only fear that people stop living for tomorrow." There was also a confidential file titled Legendum non publicandum, to be read but not published, documenting a Vatican Commission's investigation into the prophecy's true origins. Several scholars argued the text was a late 16th century creation designed to influence specific papal conclave outcomes. One historian bluntly questioned, if Malachi truly wrote this, why was it never mentioned for 4 centuries? In the end, the Vatican reached no official conclusion. The file closes with a line that encapsulates their cautious stance: "We do not publish what may confuse, even in order to deny it." Thus, the prophecy of Saint Malachi remains a specter within the Vatican archives, neither confirmed nor dismissed, nestled among the hidden staircases, secret chapels beneath St. Peter's Basilica, and whispered legends of angelic voices during papal elections. Its reality may forever remain uncertain, but as an elderly bishop once confided to me while closing the final page, there are words God never spoke but left behind for men to decide whether to believe or not. Deep within the vaults of the Vatican archives lies a somber chapter seldom fully revealed: the years of the Holocaust. These documents expose a profound silence interwoven with discreet efforts to save lives amid the darkest hours of history. Hundreds of reports from local bishops across Germany, Poland, Hungary, and France painfully detail the mass extermination of Jews. A particularly striking letter from Cardinal Adam Sapieha, the future spiritual advisor to Pope John Paul II, poignantly declared in 1942, "If we do not speak, we will bear the guilt of complicity before God." Yet, despite such urgent pleas, the official responses were marked by cautious silence. Though the Vatican refrained from public condemnation at the height of the genocide, the archives reveal clandestine attempts to shelter Jewish victims in monasteries and convents. One file documents the Santa Brigida convent hiding over 200 Jews disguised as pilgrims, with the abbot accepting personal responsibility should they be discovered. Appeals for help flowed into the Holy See from scholars, artists, priests, and entire communities, many unanswered, while others obtained secret asylum or forged documents secured by courageous nuns. The documents reveal complex diplomatic exchanges as well. Letters from the Vatican to the German embassy conveyed delicate requests to lessen persecution where Catholic Jews resided. These missives avoided direct accusations, speaking cautiously in diplomatic language to safeguard social order and the sacredness of life. This restraint, though born from a desire to protect, continues to kindle debate about the moral choices of the Vatican's leadership, particularly under Pope Pius XII. Only in recent decades has the Vatican declassified part of the archives covering this era, unveiling materials that portrayed Pope Pius XII neither as a voice loudly proclaiming outrage nor as an indifferent bystander, but as a shrewd diplomat acting covertly. The evidence shows he chose quiet interventions behind the scenes, a strategy met with both defense and criticism over its ethical implications and effectiveness in the face of unspeakable horror. Moreover, The archives preserve heartbreaking testimony of pleas from Jewish communities during and after the war, letters asking for recognition and help, often met with silence or cautious replies emphasizing freedom of choice for children sheltered in Catholic institutions. Among these, drafts of speeches intended to condemn the atrocities remained unpublished, with notes marking them as too dangerous to release amid wartime pressures. This frozen record of silence and secret aid embodies the painful tensions binding faith, politics, and survival. It is not a tale of absolution or blame, but of the heavy, often agonizing decisions made when history demands courage wrestled with prudence. The Vatican archives hold these truths not as a shield but as a solemn testament. History's most profound tragedies are often etched not just in acts, but in the silences between them. Deep within the vaults of the Vatican archives lies a profound intention: the preservation not merely of facts or singular narratives, but of the complex and often contradictory nature of truth itself. This sacred repository does not seek to shield or erase uncomfortable memories. Instead, it holds them with solemn reverence, allowing the nuanced interplay of faith, doubt, silence, and revelation to coexist in delicate balance. In these vast collections, there are no simple conclusions or seamless tales crafted to soothe or vindicate. Instead, one encounters gaps, silences, and stories half told, fragments that reveal the tensions and struggles beneath accepted histories. Within these pages reside voices long suppressed, questions left unanswered, and quiet acts of courage that saved lives without seeking recognition. The archives embody an understanding that truth is not a fixed monument, but a flowing current, ever waiting for the right time and readiness to be unveiled. The decision to guard these truths, to hold them in careful suspense rather than broadcast them, reflects a deeper responsibility. The Vatican recognizes that premature revelation of certain realities could do more harm than good, potentially weaponizing knowledge before humanity is prepared to receive it with wisdom. It is an enduring testament to patience, a faith in time itself to ultimately reveal what must be known. The chamber marked, Veritas Temporis Estate, Truth Belongs to Time, embodies this philosophy. It is here that inquiry ceases and silent listening begins, honoring the passage of eras and the unfolding of understanding. In the layers of dust and ink, beyond stories of saints and sinners, the archives stand as a guardian of the intricate, unvarnished human experience, a complex truth neither diminished by darkness nor blinded by light, but held steadfast in the quiet wait for consciousness to catch up with revelation. In the quiet depths beneath Rome, the Vatican archives stand not merely as a vault of secrets, but as a profound testament to the human journey of faith, power, and truth. They preserve a tapestry of experiences, moments of doubt, courage, failure, and hope, that reveal the Vatican not as an infallible institution, but as a living entity grappling with its place in history. Within these aged pages and sealed chambers lies the complex interplay between spirituality and worldly realities, between silence and revelation. The archives invite us to understand that truth is not always clear or comfortable. It exists in shadows and contradictions, waiting patiently for the world to be ready. In embracing this, the Vatican archives become more than repositories. They are spaces of enduring human experience, reminding us that faith, like history, must be approached with both reverence and courage to grasp its deepest meaning. The Vatican archives encompass centuries upon centuries of history, safeguarding memories and profound truths that patiently await understanding. They stand as a testament to the intricate interplay of faith, doubt, and the human experience, a silent guardian prepared to share its stories when humanity is ready to listen. If this journey into the hidden depths of the Vatican archives has moved you, if it has sparked your curiosity and desire to uncover the untold stories woven through centuries of faith and history, then join us. Subscribe now to explore more of these profound narratives, to illuminate the quiet corners where truth patiently awaits. Your support keeps alive the art of deep storytelling in a world filled with noise. Click subscribe and walk with us into the shadows of memory and silence. Thank you for listening with an open heart.